Preciados amigos y amigas, qué alegría que estemos todos juntos aquí en la Iglesia de Todos los Santos. Dear friends, what a joy it is that we are here together at All Saints Church. Mi nombre Mike Kinman. My name is Mike Kinman, soy rector. I am the rector. Mi pronombre son él. My pronouns are he, him. It's great to be here together. Been looking forward to this Sunday for a while. Like every Sunday, it's like, oh, I wish we could be in person. And this is one of the highlights of the year that we're going to get to in just a moment. Ken Turan, I guess formerly now of the Los Angeles Times, is here with us. It is Oscar night tonight, and so we're going to talk movies and anything to do with cinema and film for an hour. And most of the time is going to be for your questions. And so if you're not on Zoom, you can obviously keep watching on Facebook or YouTube on our live stream page, but really encourage you to join our Zoom room. The way you find that is go to our website at allsaints-pas.org, allsaints-pas.org. Click on the live stream link, and then you'll find the link to the Zoom room in there. And once you're in there, just put your questions in the Q&A feature. And then we're going to spend an hour just answering your questions and having some conversations about movies. Our Sunday food program is still continuing. Thanks to the whole crew who was out here this morning working on that, which is Erica, Bob, Gail, Kristen, and Corazon. They gave out 55 sack lunches today, and so thank you for that. Things are keeping going all the way that we can in new and different ways. Want to take just a moment to acknowledge really a sadness that happened yesterday. Actually 2 days ago on Friday, and that's that John Bruno, who was the former bishop of this diocese and a dear friend of all of us here at All Saints Church. John died suddenly on Friday, and our heart goes out to John's family and friends and really everyone in this diocese. So many are in grief right now for John's death, and particularly praying for our current bishop, John Taylor, in this moment. And so, please keep Bishop Bruno and his family and everyone in your prayers. And if you're someone who is grieving because of that, know that you do not grieve alone. And every week we do a Partner in Love. A Partner in Love is a local, usually, ministry that we want to support during this pandemic so that they can keep going and thrive. And in honor of the life and ministry of our dear former Bishop John Bruno, our Partner in Love this week is Seeds of Hope. Seeds of Hope's a ministry of the Diocese of Los Angeles, co-founded by Bishop Bruno. It seeks to cultivate wellness in our communities by providing garden-based nutrition education and practical cooking instruction to help people live healthier. They work with congregations, communities, schools to transform unused land into productive gardens and orchards, to provide healthy and fresh food in areas of need across the country. And if you look in the chat feature on the Zoom or in the comment feature on Facebook or on the live stream page, you'll see the link to donate to Seeds of Hope. So, okay, I'm going to stop taking up airspace here because we need to welcome in Ken Turan. Ken was the film critic for the LA Times and NPR's Morning Edition, as well as the director of the LA Times Book Prizes. He's been a staff writer for the Washington Post, as well as the Times Book Review editor. He graduated from Swarthmore and Columbia University's Graduate School of Journalism. He teaches film reviewing and nonfiction writing at USC, and he retired from the Times in April 2020, just in time to enter this new pandemic life of movie watching. So, Ken, I'm just going to have you take it away and go wherever you want to go, and then we'll dive in with people's questions. Great to have you back at All Saints.
Okay, well, thank you, Mike. Thank you. Wow. I mean, it's how strange does this feel? I just, I'm so used to being in the room, to feeling the energy of the room. It's very bizarre to be doing this over Zoom. On the other hand, I'm so grateful to be doing it over Zoom, to have this experience and to hear from, the people at All Saints who are going to ask questions. I mean, I so wish it could be done in person, but I'm so grateful to have the opportunity because the community that film creates has been one of the central things to me about why I love film, and the All Saints has been a wonderful part of that every year. But this has been a year unlike any other. I don't have to say this to anyone. We've all lived it. But, for me, as Mike said, I left the Times, and it's been I kind of feel like I retired into a retired world. So much of the things that I thought I'd be doing, I couldn't be doing. But one thing that I did plan to be doing, which I am doing, is I am working on a book. I've always, I was a history major in college. I always loved history. I love film. I've always loved film history, and I've always thought of, yearned to do something dealing with film history. And I have a book that I'm working on for Yale University Press. Has a series called Jewish Lives. It's been around for many years. Some of them are about film people, but they're about all across, the cultural spectrum. And I'm doing a joint biography of two people you can see in Mank, if you've seen Mank, Louis B. Mayer and Irving Thalberg, who were kind of the dynamic duo that created MGM and that really helped to create kind of the Hollywood system that has been around since then. It's now that system is now shaky, but it's been around for a long time. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm taking, a deep dive into, Hollywood's past, which is something I've always wanted to do. This is, I don't almost know where it's, you have to start with this year. You have to start with the fact that theaters were closed. We could not see movies in theaters. And for me, the theatrical experience is central to it. The only time that my wife and I got to the movies this whole year in terms of a theater was that when we were in Montana, we actually rented a room in a local theater. You can do this in a lot of parts of the country, possibly even California, where you just rent a theater. And I saw Tenet, Christopher Nolan's Tenet, and we both felt that it was just the energy of the big screen was such a pleasant jolt. It surprised both of us how excited we were just to be seeing that big screen, being in that big dark room. It was a great experience, and theaters are reopening. I'm hoping that I'll be able to get back into them. But there've been films. One of the things that has been good about this year is that even though the studios held films back because there were, it's like a chicken and the egg thing. Without theaters to put them in, the studio said we're not releasing our film. So that I'm already reading about there's going to be like a traffic jam this coming year when all the films that were supposed to be released last year, as well as the new films, are going to fight for the same space. So there'll be a lot of big studio films coming up once the theaters reopen. We've had some great small films, and the Oscars, because there are no big films, the Oscars are dominated by these small films, which is, on the one hand, it's good. It's given more focus to these small films. They don't get lost in the wake of the big Titanics. So people are hearing about them and hopefully seeing them. But on the other hand, not as many people see them, and there's real worry that the numbers, the visuals for the Oscars will crater this year, that the audience will disappear and that the TV numbers will be tiny. And, we will see. But, for diehard people, like myself and like, I'm assuming many of the people who are watching, we're watching the Oscars come hell or high water, So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that tonight. I think, the only thing I want to do before we get to questions is one film especially that I saw that really knocked me out, that is in contention this year for one award. I don't think it's going to win, but I think it's an exceptional film. It's probably my favorite film of the year, the best film of the year. It's one of the 5 foreign language nominees. It's a film from Bosnia. It's called Quo Vadis Aida. It has to do with the massacre at Srebrenica that happened during the war when the former Yugoslavia dissolved. It's quite an exceptional film under any circumstances. And I think it's streamable. You'd have to Google streaming Quo Vadis Aida to find out which service it's on. But it's well worth everyone's time. It just kind of it blew me away. It just blew me away. The filmmaking is that good. The subject matter is that relevant. It's a smart, political, emotional film, and we don't get enough of those. We hardly get any of those. So again, if I was running things, Quo Vadis Aida would be running for Best Picture. Period. It's not. And as I say, the smart money says it will lose to the Scandinavian film another round. directed by Thomas Vinterberg. But I'm hoping, crossing my fingers, that Quo Vadis Aida sneaks in. So I'll end on that note of encouragement and recommendation. And I guess, Mike, you will be reading the questions.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll read some questions, and I'll just sort of start with one. Do you want to handicap the Best Picture race? It sort of reminds me like a year ago, which seems, I guess, was more than a year ago, but it seems like 10 years ago. 1917 was, the huge behemoth, and Parasite was sort of the little engine that came out and knocked it away. I mean, this year, I guess if you had to pick one that was the behemoth, it would be Nomadland.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any one of those other movies that can knock off Nomadland?
I don't. I think it's going to be Nomadland, and for a variety of reasons. Number one, I mean, people think it's going to win because every other award that it's been up for, it's won. So there's not even say, well, maybe this will happen. It's swept everything. It swept everything for two reasons. Number one, it's quite a good film. It's Chloe Zhao is a terrific director. She is likely to win Best Director. She's already been snapped up, as people likely know, by Marvel. There's some big Marvel movie that she's directing. She's an excellent director. This is a very strong film. And it's also, and I think this is its secret weapon, it's a film of the moment. It's a film about this location. It's a film about people not being sure what's happening with their lives. It really speaks to where we are today much more strongly than I think the filmmakers could have anticipated when they made it. They always knew it would be relevant. That's the reason to make it. But I think it's more relevant than people really thought it would be. So the combination of that relevance and the skill with which it's been made, I think it's unstoppable. And I'm happy to see it win. I'm very happy to see it win.
Yeah, that actually gets to another question. Dan asks, what films you have seen, in your opinion, have dealt with the pandemic life the best? And do you anticipate that the pandemic will be integrated or at least acknowledged frequently in future movies?
That's a good question. The question is, how much do people want to? It'll be a while. I remember, with Vietnam, which was, a big issue and situation when it happened. It took filmmakers kind of a few years to really come to grips with it, and audiences to get to the point where they were willing to look at it again. When something is painful to live through, difficult to live through, people can be a little leery about seeing, film depictions of it. So I don't know. I think filmmakers will be unable to resist, and I think at some point there will be films. I don't know that I've seen anything that really struck me that really was made fast enough. There have been some films, and I've seen maybe one or two of them, but nothing that I would really recommend or that really stuck out as far as dealing with the pandemic, dealing with the mindset, and dealing with the life we're living. People have been just too involved, kind of living with it, dealing with it, to really make absorbing films about
it. Okay. I'm sorry, excuse me. John wants to know your take on My Octopus Teacher, which is also up for an award tonight, and sort of a popular film.
Yes, My Octopus Teacher has kind of snuck up on everyone in terms of, people now feel that it is likely to win, or certainly one of the favorites, possible to win. It's kind of, you've heard about the phenomenon of tree hugging, people who are tree huggers. I mean, this film is basically an octopus hugger. This is about a filmmaker who just basically stumbled on this octopus, as he was a diver and photographer, stumbled on this octopus and kind of got involved in its life, sort of like, was it going to survive? How was it doing? I mean, it's hard to, when you talk about it, it's hard to see that you can make an entire feature about this. But they had a kind of, you feel that he had a personal relationship with this octopus, and he definitely felt he had this personal relationship with the octopus. And it's just charmed people. It's been extremely popular. And, there are other documentaries that still might win that are more serious, more traditional, conventional documentaries. A documentary called Crip Camp, about a camp that was very significant, formative for people who ended up being battlers for disability rights. There's a film called Time, which involves which people saw at Sundance last year, and everyone thought it was a likely Oscar winner, but again, now what people may think it's too it's too serious. It's about a woman's struggle to raise a family with her husband imprisoned, and how she's trying to raise a family and get her husband paroled. And it's a situation that takes place over a long, long time, I think 15 years, maybe even longer. So it's quite a strong film. So those are possibilities. But people say Octopus Teacher is going to win. I think people want to feel good. People, want to spend time with an octopus hugger.
But one of the more interesting documentaries I saw this year, and it was just such a different film than other documentaries I saw, was Dick Johnson is Dead. And it didn't get nominated for best picture. Did you ever see that? I think it was streaming on Netflix.
Yeah,
and I wonder what you thought of that.
What happens with films sometimes, I mean, I know about it. It was at Sundance, people talked about it, but I never saw it. I never saw it. Sometimes things just slip through the cracks. Yeah, I mean, it's a filmmaker whose work I like, but I didn't see it. You liked it?
I liked it. It was, it was such an interesting take on it. It was someone whose father was in decline and I think had Alzheimer's, and it was sort of a really interesting sort of documentary about sort of life and death and dying. That her father, who was sort of in sort of the slow process of dying, was kind of the star of. She made a movie starring him, and I found it incredibly unconventional, and also for me in a year where my mother died, it was just sort of it was hard to watch sometimes, but I found it really compelling. A parishioner of ours, Steve Williams, recommended I see it, and it was really good. So, and that's interesting. You mentioned Quo Vadis Aida. Where can people see that? Is it on a streaming service like Hulu, Amazon, Netflix? Where would we find it?
It is streaming somewhere. I'm not sure where.
Okay, just Google it and you'll find it.
You can Google stream Quo Vadis Aida. I mean, when I saw it, it was on the Laemmle Theater site. For a while it was on the Laemmle Theater site where you pay individually for for film by film, and that part of the proceeds went to the Laemmle Theater chain. A lot of, again, this is one-way theater chains, the smaller chains were kind of trying to get a little bit of money. They made partnerships with filmmakers and with distribution companies, and they split the revenue. People would watch it on their site, and some money would go to the film and some would go to the theater. Again, it's just, we don't know which of the theaters, we had this situation where the ArcLight folded, hopefully someone else will take up that space. But, theaters, everyone is in trouble economically as a result of what we're going through. And we just have to hope that places like Laemmle, which, if you live in the Los Angeles area, this is the chain you count on to see many of the films you want to see. You're just hoping that, that they are surviving. So far, so good, but you have to cross your fingers.
So real quick, we have folks telling us that you can rent it on Amazon Prime for $1.99 and it's available on Hulu. So thanks for that.
Thank you. And really, if you care enough about film to be watching this, you are going to be happy with Quo Vadis Aida. If you're on this call, you will like this film. And I will
tell you what,
I will refund everyone's $1.98. Anyone who says, I wasted my time and my money, I will send you the money.
Well, I tell you, every year I look for one movie that you talk about that it's like, okay, I haven't seen it, I got to go see that one, and so you've just given it to me this year. So maybe I'll watch that tonight. You brought up the ArcLight. We've had a couple questions about that, and so first, do you think there's going to be more movie theaters that are going to kind of go the way of ArcLight and Pacific? Are you hearing anything about efforts to save the Cinerama? And then Art asks, with the demise of the ArcLight and other theater chains, what do you think is the future of streaming big Hollywood films?
Those are all good questions. What I'm hearing about the ArcLight is that, there are people who might take it on. We can't really know if anything is going to close or not close in terms of why the ArcLight closed. The internal financial workings of these companies that own theaters, it's just not public information. We don't know what kind of loans they have. We don't know how much debt they're in. We don't know how they're capitalized. So apparently Pacific Theaters just got into trouble in ways that, say, the AMC theaters have not. AMC does not seem to be imminently closing. But, the ArcLight is, and especially the Cinerama Dome is kind of a historical landmark. That would be very hard to tear down. The ArcLight is tear downable, likely, I mean, it's not landmarked the way the Dome is. But again, it would make more sense economically, it would seem to me, that another theater chain, another company that owns theaters would take over the sites that used to be owned by Pacific Theaters. I mean, one of the chains that's been mentioned is Cineopolis, which has
Mhm.
a connection to Mike Caruso, who they have theaters in the Grove and in the Americana Mall. So, maybe he is a person who's used to dealing with real estate. So there's some thought that maybe he would broker a deal between Cineopolis and Pacific Theaters. There are other people who've been mentioned. I mean, I'm hopeful that at least in the short term, someone else will give it a shot. Some other company that runs theaters will take on all these theaters. But again, the finances have to be worked out. That's why they closed. And, I don't know the details of the finances, but I'm hoping that that will happen. And, in terms of streaming, I mean, I think that's been one of the key things about this year is that I probably should have mentioned it in my introductory remarks, that so many films have streamed, that so much has streamed that has never streamed before. And one of the things that's going to change, I mean, not to get too much into the weeds, there is this thing called the theatrical window, which is how long something stays in a theater before it can stream. And the studios, and not so much the studios, but the theater chains have always wanted as long a window as possible because they want to maximize the amount of money that they can get. But partly because of the pandemic, partly because of other pressures, a lot of studios have now made deals where the window has shrunk. And I think that part is not going to go away. It's going to be quicker from theaters to your home than it's been in the past. But I don't think the theater is going to disappear. I mean, the one caveat this year, Warner Brothers, partly because it wanted to beef up, everyone is owned by everyone else.
Right.
Warner Brothers and HBO are owned
Mhm.
by the same entity, and people feel in an attempt to kind of bolster the fortunes of HBO Max, Warner Brothers announced that for this year, and they claim for this year only, things would stream at the same time they were in theaters. The whole year-long Warner Brothers slate, they said, we're going to stream them, and as well as put them in theaters. And they say it's only for a year, and I think it likely is only for a year because it would just be too grievous a blow for theater chains to have everything available at home the same day you could see it in theaters. But I don't think that, streaming is going to be more prevalent for big. I've always feared that what's going to happen is small films, theaters for small films, theatrical exhibition for small films is going to disappear or kind of fade away. But the big films, like, we just had this big success with, Godzilla versus King Kong.
Right.
People want to
Yeah.
see Godzilla versus King Kong in a theater.
Yeah.
Some people watched it at home, but I think, the numbers show that people really want that theatrical experience. And I think that's not going to go away. And that once theaters reopen, films of that size are not going to stream immediately. They're going to always go to theaters first. It's the smaller films I'm worried about.
Yeah, I actually kind of wondered because Godzilla versus Kong was so successful in a dual release and made so much money, and it's a movie that you really want to see if you want to see it on a big screen. Is dual release going to become the new thing? And I guess time will tell. But you think it's probably not.
Theater owners would really have a heart attack if dual release became the rule. And I think they still have enough clout that that's not going to happen. And also, the studios get more money from theatrical release than they get from streaming it. Again, one reason they streamed this year is to encourage subscribers to flock to HBO Max. That was part of the strategy. But I think once that they have all the subscribers they feel they're going to get, I just think there's a lot in it for the studios to have. I mean, again, the window has shrunk. The window may be down, I don't know, a month or 3 weeks. I forget what they're kind of trending towards. So it's going to be quicker to stream. But I think what they call day and date, which means it streams and plays in theaters the same day. I don't see that for the big films. I think this year is an aberration, and we'll see.
So there's another piece of streaming. There's a podcast I like to listen to. A guy named Bill Simmons does a podcast called The Rewatchables, and they talk about movies they love to watch over and over again. And one of the questions they ask about every movie is, could this be made into a 10-episode Netflix series? And I think about like something in the past, like Colson Whitehead's Underground Railroad, fantastic book. That would have been made into a movie. Well, now it's going to be a short series on Amazon Prime. What impact do you see, not so much release, stream, or put in the theater, but this increasing option to take a story and turn it into a 10-episode streaming platform series instead of a movie?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you know, we all know, I mean, these kind of limited series are the hottest things in show business.
Yeah.
And more people, I think, at this time want to make one of those series and want to make a feature. This is where the excitement is. This is where the energy in the business is. Everyone is thinking, if, even people who have feature scripts are thinking of how can they reform this to make it a series. Partly because there's a lot more, these entities that stream these series have a lot of money, and it's easier to get these things made, I think, as limited series than as features. So that's very much the coming thing. And, I think it'll shake out. I mean, some things will be, it'll become clear, everything, something would be better as one or the other. I think most entities, I don't know that I want to see Godzilla versus Kong as a limited series. Some people say, okay, this should be a feature. And I think with most things, that's going to become clear. I mean, often, with novels, sometimes it's been difficult to fit them successfully into a 2-hour feature. And so it makes sense for something like the Underground Railroad to be a limited series. And I think it's going to shake down that way. I mean, it's going to be a very strong option for properties, which one it's, but I think, they're not going to stop making features. And obviously they're not going to stop making limited series. It's just going to they're going to share the wealth.
Yeah. So another question, what do you think about so many stories that are exploring the 70s and the 80s? Is this sort of an audience, sort of an aging boomer generation? Is it that sort of the time of reflection has passed? We're seeing a lot of these right now, like Trial of the Chicago 7, Judas and the Black Messiah, movies like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably just a question of perspective. Maybe younger filmmakers to whom they didn't live through this, they kind of discovered that this stuff happened, and they say, this is worth looking at. I mean, I think Judas and the Black Messiah is very much in that way, in that the filmmaker said, boy, this happened, and this is an amazing story, and we have to tell it. There is, I should tell people, and again, I don't know where it's streaming, but and it's several years old now. It's probably about 20 years old. There's an excellent documentary on Fred Hampton called The Murder of Fred Hampton. And, you see the real guy, you see him, a lot of him, and you see the story. And, I think both of them, I think, Judas and the Black Messiah is a terrific film, one of the best films of the year. But I think that, there is room in the cosmos for both films, and people should watch both. It's not if you watch Judas and the Black Messiah, you don't need to see the documentary. They really inform and reinforce each other. And so I would recommend both of them.
That's great. Question, I'm interested in your take on the category of short films. I'm assuming this is of the live action shorts. Do you have a favorite?
I didn't see them this year. It's one of the things that happens is that, like, it's just sometimes it's hard to find the time for things that I used to find the time for. And I think watching the short films is something that I did not find the time for this year. And sometimes, I just didn't do it. I didn't do it.
That's fine. Favorite films that were not nominated?
Oh, that's a good question. Favorite films that were not nominated. Gosh, I don't know. That's such an interesting question. The reason it's such an interesting question is that there were not that many films that were any good that were not nominated. There were very few films that came out this year, and there's the number is way less. Way less. My wife is prompting me something that I have forgotten. I was nominated. Yeah, that's a plug.
Not for Best Picture, but yeah. But
yeah, no, I mean that's an interesting film to mention, because when I saw One Night in Miami, which has some nominations but not Best Picture, I thought this would really be strongly. I don't think it is a Best Picture nominee. No,
it's not. No, I that was the one I was looking for, because it may have been my favorite movie of the year. Yeah, no,
it was one of my. I think I would probably put it at number 2 behind Quo Vadis Aida.
Yep.
And I when I saw it, I thought, boy, this is going to really be an Academy powerhouse. and it turned out not to be. And I'm
Hmm.
not quite sure why. Uh, so maybe that's my favorite film that I don't think got the attention it deserved. Even it got
Hmm.
some attention and people liked it, but I think it got pigeonholed as, it came from a play. It got
Right.
pigeonholed uh, as something that was like a film play, but I don't really think that's the case. I think it was made in such a way that you really is very exciting, very dramatic,
Hmm.
great story, and I was sad it didn't get a Best Picture nomination. I was sad it didn't get better than it did. I felt similarly. I mean, some people had thought that Soul might get a Best Picture nomination, the
Right.
Pixar animated film, which I thought was also quite an extraordinary film. I mean, I think people sometimes, especially critics, they get bored with Pixar. They say, another Pixar movie, do we have to have another movie from Pixar? Do we have to like all these Pixar movies? So critics start to grumble about Pixar. But Soul, I think, is an exceptional film. I mean,
Hmm.
yes, it's a Pixar film, but its exploration of questions of mortality and questions of an afterlife and questions of soul, questions of reasons for life. I mean, this is a very unusual film. And the fact that it's a Pixar animated film, I think somehow blinds people to the fact, critics to the fact of how good it is. Not all critics, but I think also the Academy somehow this should have been a Best Picture nominee, I think, without
Hmm.
any doubt. But it
Yeah.
just didn't make it this year. I think maybe there's
Yeah.
Pixar fatigue, but I think it's really unfortunate for that to happen with this film.
There's some people are having suggestions of films that were not nominated that were good. And one that jumped to my mind was Palm Springs. Steve Williams says the 40-year-old version, which I've actually just started to watch, which is another phenomenon. I can actually start to watch a movie now and stop because I'm streaming it. Glenn Orton says First Cow, which I've never heard of. And then David Prather says the Sophia Loren film, The Life After. Any thoughts on any of those films?
I haven't seen them. I haven't seen them. I know what each one is. Actually, I did see. I saw the 40-year-old version, which I enjoyed. Again, it was at Sundance
Yeah.
last year. I quite enjoyed that. They're good, but I don't know that I feel that they should have been nominated. But there were good films out there. I guess they didn't really grab me as much as maybe they should have, or I would have liked to have happen.
So someone asked a question about the father and Anthony Hopkins, and does he have a chance to win a Best Actor? And I'm also curious: has there ever been a movie like The Father that so few people have even had the chance to see nominated for Best Picture?
That's an interesting question. I mean, The Father, I'm glad The Father is brought. Father's kind of an extraordinary film. It was a little, it, if you're of a certain age group, it cuts close to home because you really, it's a very graphic depiction of what can happen to the mind and how the mind can kind of disintegrate. Anthony Hopkins does a phenomenal job. It's a great performance. He won, I believe, the BAFTA, the
Okay.
British award for Best Actor. Everything else has been won by Chadwick Boseman, partly
Right.
because people are just, first of all, it's an exceptional performance. It's as good a
Mhm.
performance as anything this year, and also people are just still in shock over his untimely death. But it is possible that Anthony Hopkins, if Chadwick Boseman doesn't win Best Actor, it will be Anthony Hopkins. I mean, it's a life. He's been a great actor for decades, but even for him, this is an exceptional performance. It's a very strong piece of work. And I think yeah, I don't know. So it hasn't been, again, I don't pay that much attention to how widely it's been disseminated. Was it less seen than the other Best Picture nominees? And again, this is a year where many of them have not been seen by audiences at all. I mean, that's
At
why,
all.
as I said earlier, that's why
Yeah.
the numbers are going to crater because people are going to look at the list of nominees and say, haven't seen that, haven't heard of that.
What are you looking forward to in the Academy Awards presentation tonight? And what do you think about moving it to Union Station?
Well, we'll see. I mean, Steven Soderbergh was one of the director. I don't know what his title is, but there are three people who are putting it together, and he's one of them. He's an exceptionally inventive filmmaker. He likes to do things differently. He has promised that this will be different. So I'm just looking. I'm not trying to figure out what he's going to do. I'm looking forward to seeing what he's come up with. He definitely,
Yeah.
he's committed himself to this not being the same old, same old. But what he's going to do, I have no idea. it's been very difficult to get these shows to be effective, to get them so that people say, boy, this was great. And the Oscars, which is always very long, has a really a different that burden as well. But again, these people are very aware of it. It's not like they're all thinking, well, this is going to be a snap. They know it's a big challenge to make this broadcast exciting, especially with films that most people haven't heard about. So we'll see what they come up with. I mean, I think I'm looking forward to this telecast, paradoxically, almost more than I have others in the past, because it's so up in the air. It's not going to be, a host coming out, in the Dolby Theater. It's going to be something way different. And I'm crossing my fingers.
Best supporting actor, again, this year we have Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield, both in the same movie, Judas and the Black Messiah. You actually tweeted an article sort of looking at the times that that's happened before and what can we gauge from that. Art asks, do you believe that the policy of letting producers decide whether an actor vies for best or supporting actor should continue? Isn't it odd that the lead and supporting actors in Black Messiah are in the same category?
Yeah, well, I mean, basically what's happened is that the voters decided that what the producers wanted to do, they didn't want. I think, I forget which one of these actors, maybe it's Lakeith Stanfield, the producers, the producers were very aware of this situation. And I can't remember which was which, but they had Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield. One of them was being pushed for supporting and one of them was being pushed for lead. But the voters decided, no, they were both supporting.
Oh, interesting.
So this is not something the producers wanted. The producers obviously didn't want to split the vote, because classically, when two people from the same film get nominated in the same category, they split the votes and someone else wins. The Oscar prognosticators are predicting that that won't happen this time, that Daniel Kaluuya is going to win, but we'll see. We'll see.
In the New York Times piece, handicapping the Oscars, they also agreed with you. They think Nomadland's going to win, but they said if there is a movie that could sneak past, it's Promising Young Woman. What do you think about that?
I am the only person in America who has not seen Promising Young Woman.
Well, there's two of us then, because I haven't seen it either.
I mean, I think, it's clearly a significant, they've run a very shrewd ad campaign for it. The ad campaign is a movie that has started a conversation. And I think that's very true. I think this film has, both societally and in individual families, has started, conversation about, issues about the treatment of women. But I just, for a variety of reasons, maybe it's just COVID fatigue, I just couldn't get myself into the frame of mind where I wanted to watch it. I looked at trailers, I talked to friends about it, I feel I know a lot about it, but I just couldn't get into the frame of mind where I was saying I'm going to see it. But I'm hoping to rectify that. I haven't taken a vow not to see it, but it hasn't happened so far.
Well, that's interesting, sort of the effect COVID has had on us in terms of movies, and both sort of we're watching them at home now. But I think about Mank. I sat down, I'm going to watch this movie, and it's the kind of movie I generally like, and I made it about a third of the way through it, and then I just I would start falling asleep. And and part of that is I know that because of COVID, my attention span is shorter. It's much more, am I in the mood for something? What do you think? What effect do you think the pandemic has had on our sort of viewing habits? And look into your crystal ball. What do you think it's going to be like as we come out of this? Are we going to be looking for more escapism because the last year and a half have been so hard? What do you think?
That's a good question. I mean, I think what has happened, what's happened in the rest of the world is any indication, once theaters opened up in countries like China and Japan, people just flocked to the theaters. There really was a pent-up demand and desire for the theatrical experience. People didn't say, well, yeah, I used to like theaters, but I've grown past that. Audiences didn't say that. Audiences were hungry for the theatrical experience. And I'm hoping, and everyone who owns a theater is hoping, that that's what happens in this country. And we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. I mean, again, as we've been saying, streaming is going to be a bigger part of people's lives now than it's been in the past, because there is money in it for the entities that stream and for the people who make movies. And, it's kind of, you can't go back. It's a genie you can't put back in the bottle. And you can't say, yeah, we streamed a lot of stuff during the pandemic, but we're not doing it anymore. People get used to having things at home. And even though there are downsides, it's hard to focus as much. You're not enveloped. You stop, you eat, you fall asleep. All kinds of things get in the way of the experience. But for most people, at least from time to time, the trade-off is worth it. But I think we'll see. I mean, I'm hopeful that theatrical comes back strong. I think there are indications that it will, but we just don't know. We just don't know. I mean, there's so many unknowns about what we're going, what we've gone through and what's going to happen in terms of movies that, I mean, everyone is throwing up their hands. No one, people are making guesses, but everyone knows that basically nobody knows.
Yeah. So we have a couple questions about The Five Bloods, which when it came out, this is like Spike Lee, and it was like, I thought this is going to be a major thing. And I mean, except for, I think it's like Best Original Score is the only thing it was nominated for. And the sort of the outcry of Delroy Lindo not being nominated for Best Actor has been huge. Did you see The Five Bloods? What are your sort of views on that? Why do you think it was largely ignored? And what do you think about Delroy Lindo not being nominated?
No, I did see The Five Bloods, and I thought Delroy Lindo was excellent. He, could have been, he's as good as anyone who was nominated. Why he didn't get nominated is not clear. I mean, what I've been reading and what makes sense is that, as I mean, we are 2 months late for our Oscar,
right.
Get together. The Academy, because of COVID, the Academy moved Oscars till now, and they gave movies an additional 2 months to get released to become eligible for the Oscars. So they lengthened the season. And it's traditional with the Oscars that films that come out early in the Oscar year, people forget when it comes to voting. And The Five Bloods was one of the films that came out very early in the cycle. And I think, frankly, what happened is that other films kind of were newer and fresher in people's memories when they sat down to vote. And they just forgot about The Five Bloods, especially Delroy Lindo, who really, I think, like I say, his performance is as good as anyone who was nominated. The only reason I can think of why he wasn't nominated was that the film was so early in the cycle that people just forgot about it. I think that's the only explanation that really makes any sense.
Two more questions about documentaries. One person wants to know what your thoughts are about Collective. And then Susan Russell says, has anyone mentioned the documentary Time? Saw it yesterday and it was amazing.
Yeah, I think I talked about Time. I talked about Time a little bit. The one about the woman who's fighting to get her husband out of prison.
Yes, that's right. So Collective, have you seen that?
It's an excellent film. It's got another nomination. I forget, a Best Foreign Language film as well. I mean, again, films that have 2 nominations are, it's an indication that it's a very strong film if it got nominated in another category as well. So it's one of the 5 finalists for foreign language, as well as one of the finalists for documentary. It's one of these films that uncover, it's set in Romania, and it's about a major scandal that took place. And it's about how journalists kind of uncover the scandal, and the scandal is horrific, and the story gets more and more complicated, and things happen that you don't think are going to happen. I mean, it's just a real kind of microscope into society, into what goes wrong. And even if you discover what goes wrong, can you change society? Can you change government? Can you change the way things operate so that these bad things don't happen? So it's quite a provocative film. It's a really deep dive into a very specific situation, but it's really enthralling. It's, there's a reason it was nominated in 2 categories. It doesn't mean it's going to win in either one, but that's... My wife is handing me notes, but yeah, I mean, that's really so Collective is quite a strong film.
So I'm interested. You talked about the backlog of films that were waiting for theater release. What's coming up as we come out of pandemic that has been waiting for the theater release that you're really looking forward to or you're excited to see?
Well, one that comes to my mind immediately, I mean, again, one of the problems that happens with me is that there's so many films coming out that I can't remember the ones that I'm looking forward to. One for sure is Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, which was supposed to come out this year at Christmas. And the combination of Steven Spielberg and West Side Story, it's like,
Yeah.
you had me at hello. I don't know that we never know what we're going to like or not like, but does that have the elements that make me interested in going to see it? Absolutely. And also, there's a big budget, a very different kind of film, a big budget version of Dune, the great
Yeah.
science fiction novel, and it's been filmed before, with not the greatest success, but again, it's a great story, and probably an opportunity for great special effects. So that's another one I'm looking forward to.
So we've talked some about Nomadland, and Steve asked, is it unusual to have a movie like this that the same person writes, edits, and directs? I've seen write, direct before, but write, edit, and direct. How unusual is this?
Well, it's unusual, but not unprecedented. I mean, there are people who do that, but put the editing under. I mean, I believe Steven Soderbergh is someone who edits his own films,
Okay.
and it's possible the Coen brothers do too. And sometimes they do it. They use a pseudonym for the
Okay.
editing. And frankly, I should know off the top of my head. It's either the Coen brothers or Steven Soderbergh, either or both. But I mean, it's done. It's unusual. Again, Chloe Zhao comes from the independent world. This is a much more common scenario in independent filmmaking, where people have a vision and they just want to they figure they're the best person to do all these things. In Oscar-nominated films, because mostly these are studio, driven behemoths, you don't have it that often, but it's
Right.
not unprecedented.
So staying on Nomadland, one of the things that occurred to me while I was watching it is there's this sort of whole scene in the movie where the main character is working at an Amazon warehouse, and I'm recognizing I'm watching this movie on an Amazon platform, and it makes me wonder. And frankly, the portrayal of it wasn't 100% flattering, but it makes me wonder: are we going to see more and more corporations investing in movies to help shape the public opinion of their company?
That's a very interesting question. I wonder, I don't know, I don't know the specifics of when Amazon got involved. I don't know if
Interesting.
there's a link between filming in the Amazon facility and Amazon, being the platform for the film. I don't know the nuts and bolts of that decision. As the depiction of Amazon in Nomadland became controversial. The LA Times did a very long story on it, a very thorough story on it. Was it too rosy a picture of working conditions in an
Right.
Amazon facility? And, people felt both ways. People who know a lot about this felt both ways. I mean, again, some people made the point that working in an Amazon facility as a seasonal worker is a very different thing than working there, 12 months a year. And that, it's somehow the working conditions were less onerous, maybe because they were limited time for the seasonal workers. And also people, nomads get to hook up at the Amazon facility. They get to, have a light, part of what part of their arrangement is that they get to plug in their RVs, they get power, they get to use showers. There are things that they get that make a big difference to them, as you see in the film, that, are really not factors for people who work there 20, year round.
Right.
So I don't know, in terms of, I think when Amazon agreed to let Chloe Zhao film in its facility, I am guessing that they were not I don't know. I'm not sure that they financed the film. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
I tend
So
to
that's
think
different than just being the platform.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But, so shifting gears. So here's a getting older question for me, which is, I remember when I was growing up and like the VCR, like when I was like in junior high and high school, VCRs just came out, and my parents bought one of their favorite movies, Lavender Hill Mob, with Alec Guinness, and showed it to me on their old VHS player, and I really liked it, and it seemed like, man, this is a really old movie. Well, this summer, Ferris Bueller's Day Off is as old now as that movie, and like movies like An African Queen and Streetcar Named Desire was when I watched that. It's 35 years old.
Oh my God.
And like Ferris Bueller is still part of the culture. Like you go to a Dodger game and Walker Bueller gets a strikeout and you still get that, and everyone knows what that is. So like, what movies are we seeing today do you think have a chance to be still part of the culture in the same way? Or are movies still going to shape the culture where 35 years from now, there's like still that instant sort of cultural touchstone of a film?
Well, I think that phenomena still exists, but every film, as you say, is not going to last. I mean,
Right.
again, because streaming limited series became so prevalent, people started to say, and to some extent, you can see why they said it, that, movies did not become cultural events today the way they used to. The
Hmm.
cultural event for
Right.
our time, say, is Game of Thrones. That's the thing
Right.
everyone talked about. That's the thing everyone watched. But again, it's a question of cases. When Black Panther came out, which is not that many years ago,
Hmm.
that became a cultural event.
Right.
That became a classic kind of movie cultural event where everyone wanted to see it, everyone wanted to talk about it, everyone saw it in theaters, it wasn't streaming. So movies can still do that. It's just maybe the bar is higher, it's more difficult to do. But I think the notion of movies being cultural events that will last for the foreseeable future, I think that's still happening. It's just maybe a little harder to do, but I don't see anything that says, well, the day of movies is over. We're never going to have that again. I don't feel that at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Just sort of make like, I wonder, is it going to be the Marvel films that do that? What is it that's going to, what, like, I think about my kids, who, by the way, I made watch all these movies like Ferris Bueller's Day Off and stuff like that. Like, what's, is it going to be a movie? Like my kids, they get most of their content like on YouTube and stuff like that. They don't generally go to the movies the same way that I did when I was in high school.
Yeah, I mean, that is a phenomenon. That is true. I mean, I know from my grandchildren do not go the way, their parents went and the way I go, I mean, that is a worry and a situation. But, again, there are films they go for. It's not, they may not go as often or as religiously as we did, but they're going,
Yeah.
neither one of my grandchildren has said, me and my friends, we never go to the movies. They don't say that, but
No, that's true.
they pick their spots,
Yeah.
and maybe that's the way it's going to be. But again, it's an experience that there is no substitute for. There's
Hmm.
nothing that you can do that gives you the feeling you get. It goes back to what I said about seeing Tenet, and feeling that great adrenaline rush of the big screen and the big dark room. Nothing gives you that. And once you've experienced that, if you like it, you're going to be constantly wanting to see it again. And I think, again, I don't feel that's going away. It's just a question of how many films are going to, seduce people into going into the theaters to recapture that experience.
Yeah. What do you think the impact of Nancy Utley and Steve Gula leaving Searchlight is going to be? Is this sort of the end of art film studios as we know them? I mean, they've got some stuff in the pipeline like Summer of Soul, which did great at Sundance, and I think they have Wes Anderson's latest film. Like, what do you think is next for Searchlight, and what does this mean on sort of the broad spectrum?
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned Summer of Soul. I want to just put in a big plug for that. That was at Sundance this past year. This Sundance that was only viewable online, but it's a phenomenal documentary about a series of concerts in Harlem. I don't know, 50 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
which were recorded and which, for a variety of reasons, as sometimes happens, it just the tape sat in someone's basement for 50 years,
Yep.
and finally they were found, and it's amazing concert footage. I mean, we've all seen a lifetime of concert footage, and we may say, well, I've seen as good a concert footage as I'm ever going to see. This concert footage blew people away at Sundance, in this virtual world. And, there's a reason Searchlight picked it up. It's just a spectacular film. And so, people should keep an eye out for that. It's, one of the most overused phrases, which I am guilty of overusing, is the end of an era. But I think the retiring of these two people who were key in making Fox Searchlight a powerhouse in independent films, that means something. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they are close to retirement age. They didn't retire in their 40s, but I think they see that it's not that these kind of films are going to go away. It's going to get more difficult. There's more competition. When they started Searchlight, they didn't start it, but when they began to work for it, uh, films didn't stream. Netflix wasn't fighting to get the same films you were. I think they want to go out on a high note. If I read in this piece that talked about their retirement, that if Nomadland, which is a Searchlight film, if
Right.
Nomadland wins Best Picture, it will mean that Searchlight has had like 4 of the last 8 Best Pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think they wanted to go out on a high note. I think it just means that the world is getting more difficult and they want to go out on a high note. I don't think it means that this kind of filmmaking and this kind of distribution model is going to disappear. It's just going to get tougher.
Yeah. So you mentioned Summer of Soul. One of our parishioners, Clara Williams, was actually in that movie. She was with the Edwin Hawkins Singers.
Oh my God!
And she was performing "Oh Happy Day."
Yeah.
So if you go see Summer of Soul, you can see Clara Williams singing.
Oh my God. I mean, the singing in this film is just spectacular. I think, I'm trying to think of there's one moment, and I hope I get the names of the singers correct. There's kind of a duet, a gospel duet, I think, with Mahalia Jackson and, oh gosh, Patti LaBelle. I think it's Mahalia.
Oh, wow.
And Patti LaBelle. And it's just, oh my God, you can't believe it. Can't believe it. So this is a film that people.
He says Steve Williams says Mavis Staples. It's Mahalia Jackson
Staples.
and Mavis Staples.
That is correct. I am sorry. Thank you. It's nice.
We got to have you just on here with Steve.
Nice to have people who know more than I tell you. It's a great relief to have people watching who know more than I do, because I just don't want incorrect information going out. But yeah, it is. It's Mavis Staples, and she talks, today about the experience of singing with Mahalia Jackson, what it was like for her as a young singer who idolized Mahalia Jackson. So she talks about what it was like to have this experience, and you hear them singing together. And I mean, this is one of the great moments in all of, recorded concerts. This is this is up there in the top 5.
If you got about 5 minutes to go over, we can go to about 11:05.
Yeah,
if that works for you. Great. So what effect, Marianne Ahart asks, what effect have the increased platforms, Hulu, Netflix Prime, had on the quality of films and also on actors' work?
That's an interesting question. I mean, there's more of everything, there's more opportunity for people to work. And it also means maybe there are smaller films, difficult films that would not have found distribution that are finding distribution now. But they're also, because there's such a voracious hunger, there are films that are not so good that are getting distribution as well, because everyone needs to show something. So I think there's more of everything. There's more of the good, there's more of the bad. One of the things is it's getting harder to discern what you should be watching. All these networks are throwing so much original content at you. I mean, it's great for the content producers. A lot of people are employed who aren't employed, and that's an excellent thing. But in terms of viewers, it's harder to be discerning. It's harder to to know what you want to be watching. Actually, you know what? I suddenly remembered, thank God I have this piece of paper here, which I wrote it down. I remembered a documentary that is streaming that I just loved. That's a small documentary. Again, one of the things that happens because there are 82,000 channels, streaming 82 million things, is that things get lost now more than they used to. And they always got lost, but now it is so easy for things to disappear without a trace, even good things. I saw a wonderful documentary. I think it's on Disney Plus. It's called Own the Room. It's a documentary. It's like, if people remember, the Spelling Bee documentary. It's one of these.
Right, Akeelah and the Bee.
Yeah. No, the documentary Spelling Bee.
Oh, Spelling Bee, right. Oh, okay.
Which is about young people competing, when you get to see the different competitors. This is a documentary about young people from around the world who are competing in a spelling bee type contest for young entrepreneurs who go to Macau. It's an international competition for, who's going to get, win a certain amount of money for funding for their ideas, their ideas of what their businesses they want, the people with startup ideas, basically. And can they get funding? And you see these extraordinary young people from around the world who are just excited and exciting and full of life, full of great ideas, irrepressible, unstoppable. I mean, it's just a wonderful film. You will feel, it's one of these films, and you can't say that a lot, that will make you feel good about humanity, make you feel good about the future of human life on Earth. You say, if there are young people like this out in the world with this great spirit and these great ideas, things can't be as bad as we feel they are. So again, it's called Own the Room. It's on Disney Plus. It may be on other places as well, but I know it's on Disney Plus. You will watch this and you will feel good. And there's not an enormous number of films you can say that about.
That's excellent. So we've at least touched on a lot of the movies that are nominated for Best Picture. We haven't mentioned 3 of them. I just want to give you a chance, if you have anything to say something about Mank, about Minari, or about Sound of Metal.
Okay, no, I'll say something about all 3 of them. Mank, as I said earlier, it's the same period that I'm writing my book about, so I
Right.
had a lot of intrinsic interest in seeing how it would portray people that I know a lot about. I mean, I think it's a beautifully made film, but I think, it's impeccably made. It's, beautifully shot. It's well acted. Uh, David Fincher has always been, even though he's an exceptionally talented director, he's kind of a cold director. And there's a lack of warmth in this film that I just think I liked. I think there are a lot of reasons to see it, but I can't tell people they have to see it.
Right.
If you wanted to see it, I would say go ahead. If you said, I'm not sure, I would say, well, you don't have to go. Let's see, what were the other ones?
Minari?
Minari, I just saw Minari again last night, saw it for a second time. And it's a very unusual, very moving film. It's one of my favorite films of the year. It's based on the true story of the directors growing up with parents who moved, Korean immigrant parents who moved to rural Arkansas because his dad had this dream of owning his own land and becoming a farmer and growing vegetables and having his own business. And this is what happened. And a lot of things is very dramatic. A lot of things happen. There's the actress who plays his grandmother, does a spectacular job. She is the favorite for Best Supporting Actress, in fact. But there's it's almost hard to put into words. There's such a warmth, there's such a humanity in this film. You care so much about the people. You're so involved in their story. There's a real truth of human experience in this film that I think is why people have really, again, it's a film that was in Sundance a year ago, so it's been out like 14 months, and people still love it. People still care about it. People still talk about it. It's a wonderful film. And the Sound of The Sound of Metal has exceptional acting. Riz Ahmed and Paul Raci. They both do great jobs, and other actors in the film as well. The acting is very, very strong. The sound design is very strong in the film. Again, this is a film that, the people who are most excited about this film are the people who do not include me, who saw it in Toronto on a big screen a year ago, when it premiered, because the use of sound and the use of the big screen and, the big auditorium is exceptional. But it's a very strong film, and again, I was happy to see it nominated. There's a lot of strong films that were nominated this year, but you just wish that I would like to see, in an ideal world, there would have been more big studio films in the mix.
So we have, I think, maybe time for one more question. This year, and it seems we've always had movies like this that are purportedly histories, like Judas and the Black Messiah, Trial of the Chicago 7, One Night in Miami. In the past, we've had Bohemian Rhapsody, and they're all usually alternately criticized and lauded for both amplifying important historical narratives and also sort of smoothing them over and changing things and including things that weren't there. What do you think the responsibility of a filmmaker is for historical accuracy, knowing that people are going to see the movie and sort of assume this is what it is? And then what's the responsibility of the moviegoer to actually research and learn what actually happened?
Well, in an ideal world, the moviegoers would do that. We don't live in that world. And I think, as you say, people watch these movies and they take them to be the gospel truth. I've been all over the map on this question in my own thinking. I mean, I have written a lot about what it's, I was at the Washington Post for 9 years. I was there both for the events of All the President's Men and for the events of the Post. And it's very unusual to see things you lived through put up on the screen. And, you realize that by definition, when you make no matter how careful you want to be, and especially All the President's Men, the filmmakers tried very, very hard. They tried exceptionally hard to be realistic. The nature of filming something magnifies it, heroicizes it. So by definition, you can't do a film that's really accurate to what happened. But I think, obviously, ideally, you should do the best you can. You should definitely not, change history for nefarious purposes. You shouldn't try and mislead people with these films. But I think filmmakers feel that their main purpose, they have to tell a dramatic story. They have to tell a story that involves audiences. And I guess you would want them to do that and stay as close to the historical reality as they can. Or if they're not staying close, at least, I mean, one of the things I feel like, you should be very candid about what you're doing. You should say, this didn't happen, but there's a reason I did it this way. But again, I can argue both sides of this issue. I don't have a strong, my opinion has changed. Sometimes it changes from film to film. Sometimes I'll see a film that, does violence to reality I know, and I get angry at it. And sometimes I see a film that does violence to reality I know, and I say, well, I see why they did it that way. It's almost up to the filmmaker to convince me whether that violence to reality has been worth doing or not.
So I'm going to push us 1 minute, and I'm going to risk the wrath of Keith Holman for doing this. We're going to keep having you back, and this is great. And sometimes I think we got to have you back more than once a year. I'm interested in who are some of the film critics that you really follow, particularly sort of the next generation of younger ones. Who should we be reading? Who should we be following?
Well, obviously, my successor at the Times, Justin, is a terrific young critic, and he's one of the people I follow. Manohla Dargis at the New York Times is someone that I enjoy a lot. I mean, I think those are my two go-to people. I want to see what they have to say. There are a lot of good younger critics. I mean, I almost don't want to, there's so many good younger critics. There's so many, I don't want to single any of them out, because then I'll feel bad that of the ones I left out, the ones that didn't pop into my mind. But I think even though there's been worry in the past, is film criticism dying? Daily newspapers were not, were dispensing with their critics, but a lot of critics have found homes online, and a lot of places like the New York Times and the LA Times use a lot of freelancers now, which has given a lot of young critics more visibility than they might have had in the past. So there's a lot of young critics out there. And like I say, I would read the people in those two papers. I think they do a good job selecting their freelance critics. And that's where the good young critics of the future are appearing.
Great. Ken Turan, as always, wonderful. Next time we do this, we're going to do this in person. And just can't wait to have you together again. Thank you so much for your annual appearance in the All Saints Church Forum.
Well, thank you, Mike. It's always such a pleasure. I can't wait to do it in person, but if we didn't do it at all, I would have been crushed. So thank you for giving me the opportunity. And I look forward, not next year in Jerusalem, next year in Pasadena.
Next year in Pasadena. Absolutely. Okay. Go ahead, and everyone can sort of jump on over to our live stream page or Facebook or YouTube if you're not there already. We'll be back here in this Zoom room for coffee hour between the 11:15 and the 1 o'clock services. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Ken Turan, and we'll see you in worship in about 8 minutes.